Welcome, everyone, to Igniting the Flame with the Shine Collective. The Shine Collective is a new program by myself, Aideen and Riada, and my dear friend and colleague, Juliette Nosk, who is based in England. Welcome, Juliette.
Thank you. It's going to be a wonderful journey. I can feel it within me.
Oh, I can feel it too. Even when we came up with that name, Shine Collective, it was like a little tingling. We ignited a certain flame that day, didn't we?
Yes, certainly.
But today we're really speaking about more of an internal flame, and the insight that you have, Juliette, to this is just phenomenal because it comes from very sacred teachings and what's based in the ancient connection that human beings have to fire itself as basically a heat source that is what we depend on to stay warm and to stay alive. But then the analogy brings us back to having an internal motivation and strength and courage in our lives. So, Juliette, I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about what this ancient wisdom of igniting the fire within means to you.
Yes. One of the times recently that I came in contact with this beautiful art of tending the flame is where I was at a festival called the Medicine Festival, and you have the people, the individuals who are tending to the fires, and they're kind of fire guardians in a way, and they're looking after the fire and feeding the fire and keeping it in structure and in form so that it continues to burn throughout the night. And it really is an art form. And I love the way you talk about, these sacred practices in ancient cultures, because it really is ordinary and sacred at the same time. And I think that's the beauty of life, is these different paradoxes that continually I see within my own life, because it really is an ordinary thing. And the beginnings of this were when human beings, truly relied on fire for their survival, like you said. And you spoke about homes in Ireland and having the fire within. And more recently as well, a friend of mine has got a fire within her home, and that beauty of the warmth that it brings to the hearth, to the centre of the home. And so where ancient cultures and some indigenous people and tribes of different countries still do rely on the fire for heat and warmth and for cooking their food, and they want to keep the fire so that it doesn't burn out. And in some cultures, this is seen as believed to bring bad luck if it burns out when you need it to keep burning. And so the fire tenders, the sacred tenders of the flame, they continue to add logs and keep the shape of the fire beautiful, and make sure that it continues to burn throughout the night. And so when I saw this art taking place at Medicine Festival, it was really, really beautiful. And the symbology of which reminds me of tending that flame within ourselves. And that also really is an art form. And there's some interesting connections as well when you look at the powerful and very, for me, very sacred symbol of the triangle. And one of my passions and interests is studying sacred geometry. And if you look at, for example, you have the fire triangle. So the fire triangle is also known as the triangle of combustion, and it's a simple way of illustrating the three elements that are required for a fire to start and to continue burning. So you need the fuel, the material that can burn, such as wood, paper, oil, fabric, whatever that is. Then you have the heat, which is an essential component of a fire. And then you have the oxygen, and the oxygen is an oxidizing agent that's necessary for a fire to ignite. And so when all of these three elements are present and in the right combination, then the fire will begin to burn. And it's really important that you keep these three elements continually in a balanced way. Otherwise, if you remove one of these elements, the fire will be extinguished and will disappear. And so this triangle relates to the concept that it's the fire tetrahedron, and the tetrahedron is one of the Platonic shapes in sacred geometry. And
you'll have to explain what that is, Juliette, because I don't know what a tetrahedron looks like. What does it look like?
Okay, so a tetrahedron is like a triangle, but it's a three-sided triangle. So
you mean like a 3D version?
Yes.
Yeah. You mentioned the pyramids before we came on to this audio. Is that the shape that you're talking about?
Yes, I think so. My mind's a bit but I think so.
Yeah. Well, it gives us an idea at least.
Correctly. And then because the tetrahedron, then when you add other tetrahedrons to it, creates the Merkaba, which is a spiritual sacred geometry shape, which is then used for like astral travel and things like that. But anyway, the tetrahedron is the symbol of fire and contains the spirit. And that also links to our solar plexus. And our solar plexus is our center of power, of fire. And some say our connection to spirit as well. When we have that gut feeling, whether something is, right for us or not right for us, for example, when we have that gut feeling is our connection to our higher self, our God self.
Do you think we're born with that fire within us, Juliette? I mean, when you said, sometimes the flame, it burns out, and I was like, hang on, that's exactly what we call it when someone, comes to a halt, reaches their rock bottom. You have burnout, right? So we're using that term all the time to describe basically that we don't have any energy to do anything else. We've lost all of our power, our maybe it is the solar plexus energy, that motivation to move forward is gone because we burned the fire too brightly, maybe in a way. We used up all our fuel at once, or maybe it's the wrong fuel that we've been using. But when I think about it, I'm wondering if we kind of get born with it, because it feels to me like, that idea of the flame just going out, I associate that more with people as they get older rather than children. What do you think?
Yes, it's interesting, isn't it? Burnout, and what that would what that speaks to me is when a person is out of alignment with a part of themselves, like, for example, their heart, their soul's purpose. And like you say, when someone's taken on way too much, or when they're going maybe in the wrong direction. So when one of those elements, whether that's body, soul, or spirit, is out of alignment, they come into burnout. So yeah, that really rings true for me. And just to clarify, because I just double checked it, the tetrahedron is a 3-dimensional shape that has 4 triangular faces. So yes, the pyramid. So it's a triangle equal on all 4 sides with a base, and the base is 4 side, like a square.
A square, yes. It's so interesting. Yeah. I mean, I have a huge fascination with geometry. Not that I know a lot about it, but in my head, I use geometry to create protection around myself. So I will imagine that shape, that pyramid shape, and create a Merkaba around me as a protection. I don't know if that's the right way to do it, Juliette, but you're saying that that it's a very powerful symbol. So that's kind of I feel like that's another day's conversation to go down the kind of deeper into the sacred geometry side of it. What I would love to know from you is, what happens then, when we feel uninspired. That's when I feel like inspiration is a great word, because doesn't it mean it's to do with air, like spirit and air, and to feel like you've got, some energy to create something. But we don't always feel that way, and sometimes we maybe have things moving forward and everything's just going the way it used to go, and it can be so frustrating, and we really want to ignite a different flame within us. We have a desire, but we may not know exactly how to ignite something within us again.
Yes, yeah. And I think the root of inspire is to do with breathing, and to like breathing upon. So it is like breathing in air, and we take our first breath when we're born, and we release our last breath when we pass away. And often people talk about how the breath is the life within us. And yeah, I forgot your question, sorry.
Don't worry about that. How do you ignite the flame, Juliette? That's what we said we'd be telling people today.
How do we actually ignite the flame? I think for me, what it comes back to is what I heard someone speaking about the other day, and it's, we're very consumed, especially this time of year, or at least in January, February anyway. The gyms get very full, and we start doing more exercise because we want to get nice and fit and healthy, and we're doing, a lot of working out. And I think for me, it's working in. And I heard someone say that the other day, and I was like, yes, that's what it is. It's working in, it's doing the inner work. And when we begin to connect inwards to that self that is within, that is, beyond the body, beyond the mind, and we connect with our inner self, and it can take work, to peel away the layers. But again, it comes back to the pyramid. So it's not just the working in that we need to do, because also the working out is an element of that, because obviously, if you're feeling like lethargic, if you're unhealthy, if your body, which some say your body is like, that's the temple of your soul, if your body is not happy and healthy, then you're going to be spending a lot more time focused on that rather than being able to build your fire. So I think that's why we have the 3 different elements. We have the body that we need to work on, we have the soul, and we have the spirit.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I'm thinking about that fuel for reigniting as, trusting yourself. There's this idea that we do get curious about things. We do want things, but we stop ourselves from moving forward sometimes because of self-doubt. So if we could just trust those intuitive pushes, that kind of that pull within us, when we're working inward, we have to start listening to that, and sometimes we don't. We distrust it. We get a little bit cynical sometimes about whether we have any ability to move forward on our own. We start looking to others. We start watching what other people are doing and start following other people's paths. So there's something there in igniting the flame through, maybe there's a meditation practice or maybe there's inner work, but it comes down to, start listening to yourself and start, asking yourself, what is it I'd like to do? And even in the simple things of, I want to go for a walk, or I want to call someone, or I want to, I just feel like doing this today. Start doing those things again.
Yes, yeah. And I think what you're talking about there is the soul and the heart, the soul, and the intuition, and listening to those messages that your inner tuition is giving you.
Yeah, for sure. So we have some time to open up to anybody who's listening. Anybody have any question or any wisdom or comment that they'd like to share about today's topic?
Before you do that, can I just mention one thing? So if we come back to the 3 elements, if you imagine we have, so the body, which is linked with our emotion, it's the flesh and blood, and it's linked with our emotion, our senses, and our perception. The physical reality. Then we have our mind, which is consciousness and thought, connected with our brain. This is very much our essence, and it's also our will, which, as we know, sometimes doesn't necessarily come through because we try and force our own will rather than the will of the universe. And then we have the 3rd element, which is the soul, which is connected with our heart and grounding within the body and our intuition and our inner connection, our inner tuition. And so it's those 3 parts that we're working on. And if you look in a lot of teachings, that trinity, just like with the triangle, just like with the fire triangle, that trinity is a magical kind of combination, shall we say. So yeah,
that's amazing. You said earlier that the fire needs fuel, heat, and oxygen. So this is how we kind of bring it back into our own experience, is to look at it from the point of view of body, mind, and soul.
Yeah.
Leaving nothing out. Because this is what the problem is. We sometimes get too caught up in one.
Yes.
And there's so much, when you think of the geometric shapes, and in particular the tetrahedron, there's so much solidity and groundedness when you think of those, that there's a square at the bottom. Now that's where, now we need to figure out what the fourth element might be, because there must be an extra something there for the 3D version of the triangle. But it's such an interesting way to imagine, you know, coming back into alignment with your purpose, because to me that's what the flame really is. It's a form of a purpose. We want to feel connected to something that matters to us, something that really means something. And we are the only people who know that. I feel like sometimes we look so much to those outside of us, and I think that can be useful. Sometimes someone will reflect something back to us and be like, oh, I see this about you, and it really helps us. But there's a lot of who we're becoming that only we kind of have, that, you know, there's like an inner kind of what's the word I'm looking for? It's like there's like a hint, or it's like a clue that you're tuning into something. You're like, I feel a little pull this way, and I don't think anyone else can really sense that unless they're very intuitive. So we have to somehow trust that we are growing and we are evolving, and some of these little pulls and these little ideas about maybe I could do this, that actually might be the right path for us, and maybe we should test out that idea and use our body, mind and soul, and use that working in to start tending that flame, which is like a new version of ourselves that we want to move into.
Yes, and this takes practice. You know, often people are searching an overnight magical solution or a magic pill or something like that, but these things take practice, and I think that's one of the huge lessons that I've learned in my life and with working with clients, is that it takes, you know, the daily things that we do. When people come to me and they want to develop their intuition, and they say, you know, well, how can I hear it? How can I trust it? And I always say to them that, you know, I was just speaking to someone the other day about this, about practicing, you know. So, for example, if you have, you know, smaller things that you want to, that you can kind of test out, and then asking yourself, is that true for me? Or if you have a decision to make that maybe isn't such a major decision, you can ask your intuition. And it's usually that quiet whisper, for example. If we're speaking of the intuition, it's usually that quiet whisper that comes first. And in that case, it's quite important to act on it straight away, because otherwise then what happens is the mind comes in, the chattering monkey, the noisy monkey, chattering monkey mind, and then shares all its, you know, doubts and reasons and justifications and other things. So for me, this has been a huge practice in strengthening my connection to my intuition, to my intuition. Yeah. And so if we look at any of those three areas, there are various practices, which I'm sure you have many of, Aideen, as well. One for me, for example, is reading texts that are supportive of my own personal spiritual journey. And every time I read them, I gain new insights and new wisdom. It's amazing.
That's one of the things I did have as a practice. We know the way a lot of us watch TV at night or whatever. So when I was going through one of the biggest transformations I went through, I made a commitment to only read something of value, like a spiritual value, before going to sleep. Because there is research to say that what we do just before we fall asleep and just as we wake up is more retained in our minds. So it can actually be a fast track to learning to look at something or to read something or like practice your music or whatever it is just before you go to bed and when you wake up. And I found that I slept so much better, and it's almost like our mind can kind of, it's like it digests what it is that we've been reading overnight. So I highly recommend that as a practice. Another practice that I would say relating to what you were talking about, that inner voice, is I actually feel it, and I think it depends on the person. So whatever you feel is right for you, okay? But I actually feel it almost like a little, it's almost like a little cheer, like a cheer, like a yay inside my body, like a physical thing. And I would have started practicing my intuition when I was out at a restaurant for food. Have you done that, Juliette? So what you do is you look at the menu. And what I would do is I would scan the menu for headings. I'd be like starters, main course, blah, blah, blah. And I would see if I got a little yay in my body, like a excited about this feeling, right? Just by looking at the headings. And then I would go find which heading was the most kind of, drawing me the most. And then I would look down through it and I would see if one of the menu items was calling to me almost. And it was very surprising, because then there was times where I would second guess it. I'd be like, I don't really want that. My mind would come in. But when I did choose the things that I kind of had a physical kind of, it's almost like my intuition was kind of going, go on, try it, would you? Go on, little nudge from my little, happy white angel on that shoulder. And I would feel like I would get this amazing food that I probably wouldn't have chosen, because I'm very rigid sometimes, my personality. Like I'd get the same thing at the restaurant every single time. And Mike is the opposite. He's like, let's go somewhere new. And I'm like, no, let's go to that place because I know exactly what I'm going to eat when I get there.
Yeah.
So that's one little thing that I did to practice my intuition, because it didn't have a lot of weight. It wasn't going to be something really, I wasn't making a big life decision. I was just making a small decision, but it really helped me to start to trust it. The other thing was when I was buying clothes and things like that. And that was harder for me because I always wanted to buy the thing, So I bought quite a few things that I didn't get a woohoo feeling within my body. And they were always items that I ended up not wearing very much. So I don't know. Have you tried anything like that, Juliette?
Yeah, for me, I haven't tried the restaurant one. That's quite a good one. For me, I just do it with, things that I would love to do, and, places I would love to go or people I would like to hang out with. So I've done it with that. And also coming back to when you said about reading before bedtime, for example, this is when our brain goes into the theta brain waves, which are, just before we go to sleep, as it were. So early in the morning and late at night, we have our brain waves, which are theta brain waves. And this is a time where we're more easily able to program our minds. So that's also why it's a good time to do that reading and, positive focused affirmations and things like that at that time, is because your mind is more open to receiving those.
So interesting, because there's always some form of science or, reinforcement around if we look for that. It's not just the woo-woo.
Yeah.
Juliette, are you ready for me to open up to questions?
Yeah.
Great. So does anybody have a comment? I'd love to hear what you've done yourselves to increase your intuition, or if you found that your flame died out and then you've somehow found it again, and how you might have found it again. Be very interested to hear that. So you can request to speak. Mary Jane?
Well, I unmuted myself because I can't request again. So, for me, I know, Aideen, you know this about me. One of the best ways to tap into my intuition and to reconnect with that, I guess that reigniting the flame, is to reconnect to my creativity. in whatever form that takes that day. Could be anything, could be painting, could be arts and crafts, it could be anything that really just reignites that flame and frees my mind from, as Juliette was mentioning about that monkey mind that kind of, doesn't let me sort of listen to my inner voice and what it is that's really guiding me. And so that's part one. And part two is just taking time for self-care in whatever form that takes. So, I mean, I know that Jen and I do workshops and things that are based on self-care, self-kindness, and self-love. And so whether it's something like that or just taking time to go and get pampered or go like at a spa or just taking time to take walk in nature. I know this is a big one with Jan and also me, just to take a walk in nature and let the mind wander and reignite that flame that's inside. So those are just some things that I do in addition to reading and of course mentoring with Aideen. So
well, I love having you join those classes too. And yeah, we all have our own way of doing it. And I think it's really important not to try to just do what others tell you, but test out what lights you up, what you think will help you along your journey. Any other comments? Jan?
Hi to you both, and hi Divine in the listening lounge. So for me, I think it became a part of movement. For me, it was like that exploration or that real true knowing of like getting on my yoga mat and really looking at it like my playground. Like, what did I need that day? What did I feel? Asking myself those questions, which I think for so long in my life I had so ignored. I was supposed to do the to-do list, and I wasn't really supposed to ask those questions because I had things to get done and whatever, and sort of an image to portray or whatever we want to call it. So I think for me, it was that real personal exploration, that play on my mat. And then like Mary Jane, getting out in nature. And I think the last one was if I, at points, and I do this always, but especially at points where I felt like I want to say almost lost, was the ability to see awe and beauty. So going out and seeking it, or looking for things that like were just amazing within my own home, but that ability to look at things with that kind of perspective of, and it just gave me the ability to see that honest, that kind of ability, the beauty within myself. It didn't seem so far apart at that point. If I could get there and I could just experience it, like, not look at it from a distance, but actually like embody it in mind, body, spirit. So that always has been something, but especially when I feel like, where am I supposed to go from here kind of feeling.
Yeah, definitely. And I know that in my own life and people around me, sometimes the confusion and the feeling of I don't know my purpose and I don't know what to do next comes from focusing on things that are too big. So it comes from, I need to change my whole career, and you just see that. And instead of kind of, coming back down to micro things that you can pay attention to, like that, even if it is just your body on the yoga mat, or even if it is, how am I reacting to this thing that I'm reading or this conversation I'm having? And it's so important to come down to the small things in life. I've recently read Michelle Obama's book, and she talks about this in her most recent book about having something small that you do. And for her, it's knitting. And she talks about, how you can kind of build your belief in yourself, your self-belief, through doing something like tidying up a cupboard in your house, or, writing in, your journal, or writing a little poem. So I love that you mentioned that, Jan, about coming back down to something small, seeing something within your own home that you appreciate. I think that's absolutely beautiful and so useful to anybody that feels like their flame has died out a little. Anyone else want to pipe in and say anything else? Juliette, I muted you just temporarily because I could hear some background noise, but if everybody, Divin, I would love for you to speak. You'll have to help me with your pronunciation.
Thank you, love. Hello, everybody.
Hi.
Excuse my voice this morning. You are a voice and communication coach. Great to meet you,
Thank
Aideen
you.
and Juliette. Thank you, Mary Jane, for inviting me in here with you guys. And I'm grateful to be here. Grateful to be here. I'm going to take a breath because I feel like that's another beautiful way of us slowing down and connecting with our intuition, right? Especially when we are coming into spaces where we are humanly not familiar with people, but spiritually and intuitively we may be familiar with souls, with energy. And I would say that when I first started connecting with my intuition about 7 years ago, it got stronger for me, is that I needed a lot of isolation, which is solitude, and connecting with myself again and connecting with nature and, pretty much everything that you guys were saying. The only thing that I would add to this conversation too is breath work, breathing and taking in that inner chi, that breath work, that spirit, that slowing down and allowing ourselves to be receptive. I think the intuition requires us is to be receptive. A lot of time we're not receptive. We are always going and doing and being there for everybody else. And whether that be leading, coaching, whether you're a parent, I'm a mother, I'm home right now, right? I got a lot of things that I have to do today. Happy Thanksgiving if you're celebrating Thanksgiving. And what I've noticed is that taking time to breathe and to be centered and to be still and to be silent, connecting with divination tools. I'm a divination teacher, so I like to play around in the esoteric field with tarot cards and oracle cards and feeling the energy out of the cards and listening to my intuition there or my pendulum, things of that nature too, right? So there's a lot of things here for us to explore and to experience because everything was created for us to explore and experience, and our intuition will let us know, right? It's not something you have to, I tell people, you don't have to go back and forth in your mind about it. It's not the duality. It's not this or that. It's not right or wrong, really. It's all about, let me feel into this. Let me pause. Let me breathe, okay? And sometimes the intuition will have you do something that goes against your morality. And I think a lot of people have a hard time with that, especially when it comes to following your heart. You'll go against your morality, like, wait, this doesn't, I don't believe this. Why do I want to do this? When I got into esoterica, I was like, oh, this is witchcraft. And I'm like, what? I'm like, no, let me get into the oracle card. Let me get into the loving stuff, right? Let me get into the things that make me happy and bring me joy. And then I got into it. I'm like, this ain't witchcraft. It's all about the intention and the energy that you're being called, magnetized to, I would say, right? It's like a magnetic pull. What do you guys feel about your intuition being like a magnetic pull? I'll end it there, love. Thank you for allowing me to share.
Thank you so much. That's absolutely beautiful. And we mentioned inspiration and the breath. Yeah, it's really, really beautiful that you reiterated that and, emphasize that the breath is such an important tool to come back to spirit and to come back to that inner flame. We're finishing up now. So, Juliette, I'd love to invite you to unmute and say a few words to close out our session today.
Yeah, thank you everyone for your input. And it reminds me of, when I'm in circle, whether it's my women's circle or other circles that I run, and reminding people that although Aideen and I are facilitating every single person in the circle brings value, and the circle this space wouldn't be without every single participant. And neither Aideen nor I, I'm sure she wouldn't mind speaking for me in this, are on any pedestal. We're all equal and very different in our own ways, and we're all part of the circle. So thank you again for your input. And I just upset to leave people with, think about, playfulness, creativity, and what is it you did it as a child or when you were young that you love to do? Or if you can't remember, maybe just think of yourself as a child now and, give yourself permission to play, to have fun and to explore and to go out there and try new things. And this is also a really great way to start the igniting of the flame within and connect with that innocence that you have within you, that wonder, that seeing the world with new eyes and playfulness. And have a go at it.
Yes. And as well, I think, I try not to compare yourself to anyone, because we all have different levels of energy at different times, and it's okay to be sweet and gentle and quiet, and you don't have to be switched on all the time. And a flame doesn't have to be burning hard to create a lot of heat. So there's value in every kind of fire within us, and you are enough in this moment. And I absolutely 100% agree with Juliette that each of us have a very big part to play in being part of this session, and with the wisdom that each of us have brought, just little nuggets. And if you're listening and you haven't had a chance to speak, please listen to yourself, and trust that whatever your inner guidance is saying is actually perfect. And it's a good starting point, even if it sounds weird or goes against your previous, societal morality, as Divine mentioned earlier. So sometimes testing a strange new pond of water can be a good starting point for a new beginning. Thank you all for listening, and we look forward to joining you again next week for our next session here of Igniting the Flame with the Shine Collective series.